So with our handsome Mr. M, so Max, nice job, sir. He is on my longer lead. This is a biothane leash. I think I may have mentioned them here and there. So biothane is one of my favorites because it doesn't get gross and dirty as you're practicing. So the benefit of having something like this is as he's practicing and sometimes dragging the lead, it's not going to get all the moisture and dirt and debris stuck on it. A lot of times with certain equipment, like let's say a nylon or even a cotton long lead or training leash, as they're being dragged, they start to pick up all the yucks on the ground. So he says that one's not for him. So here you go, try that bad boy. So with a long line, the benefit of this is, again, working recall practice, working with distractions, Max, nice check-in, and then allowing your puppy to be a little bit more able to meander and go at his rate for, let's say, his gait and his speed. Nice job. He says that was delicious. So the benefit for this for Mr. M is we could start to work on recall practice as well. So if recalls are not as fluid as you would like them to be, what can happen is a lot of times, and there is some noise in the background today with the building, but what can start to happen is we can start to poison a behavior or a skill or even a cue. And you can sometimes even poison food. So I'm not saying to poison and to get harmed by it, but what I mean is, let's say the dog starts to associate the food as the bringer of the bad. So what I'm going to warm up with Mr. M is I'm going to do a few find its where he can romp further away, and then I'd go, Max, come. Beautiful. And feed him for that lovely engagement. And of course I dropped a snack, but he says that's fine. 2 for 1 is perfect. So some recall rules to think about is throughout this, I'm doing a couple lovely find its so he can go and get distracted because the environment is not sort of as distracting as, let's say, being outside. So if he was outside, Max, he says, hold on, this treat is perfect for rolling on. Some of the treats are a little stinkier, so some of the babes prefer to use them almost like cologne at times, not necessarily as a snack item. So again, let's say Mr. M is a little distracted. I'm going to try again. Max, come. Yes. If, let's say, recalls are turning into the end of fun, there's 3 recall rules I like to think about when I'm practicing. So recall rule number 1 is don't make it the end of a fun thing or the end of a game. So let's say, for example, your babe has been doing a really great job going outside to the restroom, you called them to you, and they've been then coming into the home and doing a really nice job. But now let's say your puppy is on tune. I know, very exciting. And let's say, for example, so let's say he's woo-wooing. I'm just going to move because I don't want him to think that woo-wooing is going to get him some snacks or more attention. So if, let's say, for example, you are calling your puppy to you from outside, and then that means now the game is over, and we go back in the home where it's a little bit more calm and kind of a little bit more boring from the puppy's perspective, he might then start to think, gee, every time you call me into the house, I lose out on outdoor time. So we want Mr. M to, let's say he's frolicking in the yard or he's on a leash frolicking, whatever you have for configuration. So if you don't have a fenced-in yard, this is where this long leash would come into play. So let's say Mr. M is frolicking in the yard. You would call him to you and go, Max, come. You'd feed him for that first little recall, but then you'd send him away to go frolic or play in the yard again. So you would do several recalls back and forth from the environment and having a great time checking in. And maybe on that 7th recall or the 3rd recall, you bring him into the home. But if every time it's recall and then the game is over, then recalls become the end of the fun. And they start to not come as often when they used to come much more readily in the very beginning of that practice. So again, Max, come. So recall rule number 2 is don't pair it with something scary. So we sometimes, like let's say, for example, one of my dogs has to go take a tub, and let's say Bill doesn't mind going in the tub, but he's not a huge fan of the tubby time. If I were to call him to me to then go bring him to the bathroom and do a tub, he may then find that recalls are at times paired with the bad. And then the next time I call him, since he doesn't know, ready, find it, what the recall is going to be bringing him, he might start to think, gee, last time recall equaled tubby time, maybe I don't want to come when called because now I associate recall with the bathroom and going to take that tub. So obviously if your baby is struggling with, cooperative care or dealing with sort of normal puppy in and outs like grooming or handling or vet visits, definitely check out, I know I mentioned earlier, the cooperative care resources, because we don't want our dogs to start thinking that being handled equals uncomfortable, painful, or too scary. So right here, Max, come. Yes. So you'll see, obviously, as I'm blabbing, I'm sometimes doing a couple find its, and then having him practice coming back and forth between the environment and myself. And then sometimes we just start moving around. And he's like, woohoo, nice leap over the leash. So what Mr. M is working on is, again, a couple little bounce backs from either the environment or distraction. And then we're feeding for the recall, or we're also sometimes feeding for the beginning stages of some loose leash walking as well. So again, right here, Max, come. Yes. So the third recall rule is that you don't want to go ahead and, let's say your puppy did the silliest thing ever, like he ran away because he was off his gear and he doesn't quite have a recall yet, or whatever the excuse is. So let's say he's scuttled away and now he's frolicking in the roadway or almost getting again into some trouble there. And now, for example, your dog finally comes back to you and you get upset with them. If you get grumpy and you start to scold them for when they come to you, even though you're upset because they weren't listening, they were going to maybe become injured by crossing the roadway. The problem there, though, is your puppy's not going to understand that you're mad because of what he just did. He's going to think you're mad because he finally came to you and he did that recall. So don't scold the recall, even if the puppy's done the silliest thing ever and could have been harmed. If you start to make recalls bad, ready? Max, come. Yes. Then the problem with a recall is that we can, again, poison it. You'll see too that whenever I call Mr. M, if let's say he doesn't respond, I'm not going to say it over and over. So let's say, for example, you called your pup and you said the recall word, which could be come or here, whichever slogan you prefer. If your babe doesn't respond, you don't want to say it over and over. So let's say, for example, we'll pretend, let's say I said his name and the C word, nothing happened. I would then want to walk about half the distance from where I called him originally to the pup. So I'm going to go a little closer, and then I would go, Max. He's like, hold on, lady, I got to roll in this stinky snack. So let's say I called and there was no response, which right now he says I'd rather roll in the dog snack. So I would go a little closer to him. I don't know if you can see him in the camera because he's maybe a little out of range. I'm going to lure him into my space and I'm going to feed him, for coming back into my bubble, a few little snacks. So technically, if he's struggling and you're saying his name and the recall word and nothing happens, don't keep repeating yourself. You want to try to say it once and maybe a second time from a closer distance, but then if he doesn't respond, go and help him. So if, let's say, we didn't help him through the situation, he might start to think that recalls are just us spewing noise and then not really knowing what the heck you want from him. So remember, if he doesn't understand the language, we might have to go again from here, go, Max, come, yes, and feed for that. So with a long lead or a training leash or a long line, there's so many options, drag lines, there's a lot of slogans for these bad boys, is I would recommend to get a length that you feel comfortable using. He says, I don't want the cheese right now. That's okay. So the length that I find a lot of folks really enjoy is probably like 15 to 20 feet. You could, of course, go bigger, but then I find that the longer it is, the more you have to think about keeping it not getting tangled. So I can help you in 1 second, Ebba, okay? So she's just doing some coloring but needs help with the coloring book. So for Mr. M, you'll see that throughout these little tossings of snacks, or he's getting a little distracted by the environment, I might go, Max, come. Yes. So if, let's say, too, your pup is having a hard time with this, do not work it in the real world setting. So ready? Max. So let's say there's a really good smell here, and let's say he didn't respond. I'm going to walk down my leash, get a little closer, Max, come, and then bring him to roughly where maybe I would have had can't talk today, where I may have originally called him from. Nice. So right here, beautiful. So I'm going to feed a couple little jackpot moments. So a jackpot, again, too, guys, is where you feed your puppy one after another, several snacks versus a handful. Dogs are not the greatest at counting, which is fine, but they won't realize that a handful is not just one snack. So I find if you just give one big handful, they start to view that as one snack versus multiples given one after the other seems to me more of value to them as well. So nice with little jumping and going to find it. And then Max, come. Yes. So, but if you're finding the puppy does an amazing, let's say 5 to 10 recalls, don't always make it 5 to 10. Don't always make it 15. Make it easy for the puppy so it's attainable. So if let's say your babe can rock a lovely 10 recalls, maybe one day you do 2. Another day you might try 5. You can also work this in the house where maybe your pup is in the living room and you go around the corner to the hall and you start calling their name, and not over and over, but see if they can start to come find you. So playing hide and seek and then getting your babes to do a little finding of you can be another great way to build up the fun and sometimes be out of visual range so your puppy can work that recall when you're not right in the present, so right there in front of them. So we'll do another little find it, get them a little distracted, and then go, Max, come. Yes. You'll see though that I don't I don't reel him in like a fish with my lead. So if there's a safety situation, and of course you need to get him away from something that might be dangerous, then you can go ahead and collect up your leash and then pull him away carefully from that thing. But otherwise, think of them as being off of their gear when they are even on the long lead. Because if you're looking to the gear to create the behavior again, then what happens when your dog is actually naked later? So you would go from a drag line like this or a long lead to then eventually maybe dragging a shorter leash and eventually dragging nothing and still working those same recall dynamics. But remember, don't jump sort of and skip skills. So if your babe is just now working recalls in the home and you're working at this level, and now you go to a brand new park super far away, maybe let's say there's a lot of distractions, brand new environment, and you do it off leash, the pup's not going to have a stepping stone to get to that level because they haven't actually practiced. So ready? Max, come. Nice job. He's doing a beautiful job. So remember, recall rules real quick. Don't make them the end of fun or the end of the game. Don't pair them with something scary, and then don't go ahead and get mad at your pup if they didn't respond when you first called them. So remember, your puppy not responding is not them trying to be a jerk or not listen or not care to, do what you want. A lot of times they're struggling with the dynamic, the setup, or even in general, just what the heck you're asking. So right now I'm just warming him up again with a couple of these find its, and notice how he reorients to me. So we might go again with that little positive interrupter. So you could be doing name recognition with some of this. You could be doing that little kissy noise, which is my little positive interrupter. You could be going from here and then building into, again, Max, come. What a good boy. And eventually you could even let this drag within sort of safer bubbles and give it a try where he's off leash but still dragging a long line. Good job, sir. Max is like, I don't know how I feel about my leash wedgie at times. Ready? Find it. 2, if you find this gauge is too big, even though it's only a 5/8 width-wise, you may find that maybe for him, he prefers a much more narrow lead, but he's pretty big, so it's not like he can't drag this one around and do okay. But some of the puppies, if they've never felt equipment like this, you might even start off in the house dragging his leash around, and then from there transition to dragging this around the home or yard environment, but of course always supervised. So again, we'll do another little find it. Max, ready? Come. He says he's not into the cheese, but that's okay. He's been liking my other training treats, and he's actually been really liking, of course, the ham, which has become his favorite. So ready? Find it. So some of the treats I'm using, there's the Wellness Pure Bites, and I believe they're duck and lamb, or it could be, duck and lamb. And then the other one that I'm using is a beef snack, and that one is they're called the Real Meat Treats. And those ones are another great option because they're very simple. So if some of the babes are struggling with tummy upset or allergies, or you just want to have a snack that's not too loaded with lots of junk, they really make for nice training treats. Because on the topic of training treats, not to again, be mean to any training treats out there, but there are some that have preservatives that are linked to cancer. So for example, milk bones, bacon strips, pepperoni, a lot of those brands and even some different food lines will have a preservative that causes cancer in lab animals, which then of course would cause cancer sadly in our pets. So there are definitely some brands I highly recommend to stay away from, especially if some of your dogs might be more prone because of genetics to even having cancer down the road. So definitely what you put in is sometimes what you also get out, but also it might be something that we're fueling the fires to something we would rather not have fueled and be put out. So right here, yes. Nice check-in, sir. So give Mr. M a little breather from the recall practice and recall rules. If you have questions about any of these setups, and don't get tripped up yourself, then feel free to always check in. He says, I didn't like the cheese, and of course I stepped on it. Someone else gets to enjoy the cheese later then. But if ever there's a question or concern, or you've tried something and it's sometimes not going in the direction you were hoping, you guys can always check in, and you can always film yourselves, not again failing from the dog's perspective or yours, where they're being overwhelmed and put into a bad situation. But maybe there's a moment where, okay, I'm going to practice recall practice in the backyard, film a few of my little attempts, and then see how it's going. So Max, yes, nice job. So here you go. But you guys can always reach out, check in, and keep me updated, because I know today is their last class of this session. Good job, Max. So give Mr. M a little breather from this, bring him out for a little potty, and then we'll work a few more little skills. But good job, Max. So smart.